Hey everybody, it's Brian Slagel, the CEO of Metal Blade Records, where we were home to, and still are home to, many big bands like Amon Amarth and Killswitch Engage and Cannibal Corpse and Gwar, Whitechapel, on and on and on, and also the artist we're going to talk about today, Slayer. For all of your concert merchandise, sports merchandise, entertainment merchandise, you want to go check out our friends, oldglory.com. They have it all: heavy metal, rock, sports, all sports, entertainment stuff. If you want a shirt or a hoodie or any sort of merch from all of those various things, you want to go to oldglory.com. And when you go, put in the code METAL1982 and you will get 15% off your order. So go visit oldglory.com as soon as you finish this podcast. So we're going back to Hell Awaits, and we're going to not only talk about the album Hell Awaits, but the song Hell Awaits. And we're going to welcome in Bill Metoyer, who is in the studio for this record, to talk about the production part of it. And then our good friend, Mr. Blasko, who's bass player for Rob Zombie and also was the bass player for Ozzy Osbourne's band. And he was very emphatic about doing this song. So that's why we're doing it today. As always, though, first up, we're going to have our good friend from Canada, Mr. Martin Popoff, give us some information.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, sweet choice with Slayer, Hell Awaits. Wow. So yeah, the cool thing with this situation is Show No Mercy was a groundbreaking album. It came out December 3rd, 83. We then got Haunting the Chapel, June 1984, Live Undead, November 16th, 1984. So they're working at a good pace here. But the cool thing is that Show No Mercy turned out to be a success, sold like 40,000 copies. You know, it was self-financed by the band, but this time Brian came through and said, obviously you guys have got something here. This is doing well. You've got a great sound. He's helping finance this, and that allows them to have better engineering and better production on the thing. And you definitely hear the steps forward. I mean, it's not crazy forward. This is still an album that is sounding like fairly bare bones, but it's also kind of like the wet snare sound, and kind of the sludginess that you got on the debut is not here. You also get the band growing by leaps and bounds as well. You've got them. This is kind of a cool thing. I love the sort of idea that they were inspired by Merciful Fate here to do longer, more progressive songs, and you definitely get that here. You got less songs and they are longer. Hell Awaits, I think, is 6:16. You know, there's not a lot of different parts in this song. There's more in some other songs, but I think there's a great statement being made here. But I love that idea of being inspired by Merciful Fate, because when I've talked to the Merciful Fate guys, they were inspired by how amazing and professional Judas Priest was sounding on Sad Wings and Sin After Sin. So their thing was that they wanted to be better than Judas Priest, or as good as Judas Priest, or in that sort of category. And Slayer here is rising to that challenge as well, recognizing that Merciful Fate is this incredibly, strangely professional band who are just a baby band kind of thing, right? So yeah, this is Slayer really establishing their sound and growing by leaps and bounds. You know, Dave jokes that on this one, at least, he didn't have to overdub his cymbals. So you've got that going for it as well. You've still got a fairly loud but dry drum sound, but everything is just much better here. This is a very fast song, so it's definitely a proper early days thrash song. Although, you know, I guess now into 1985, it's not exactly early anymore. Let's say you're really getting the Slayer sound, put it that way with this. The other thing where you really get that cool Slayer sound is you've got those KK Downing type guitar solos, and you've got two sets of these very wild and frenetic and dissonant guitar solos throughout this song as well. You get that long intro, which with the whole, you know, spooky backwards, evil devil sounds, join us sort of thing, right? You've got this great intro to the whole album coming up, and it is an epic album. I remember getting this at the time as a new release and just feeling that it was really professional, dense. There was a lot going on. They seemed like really smart guys making this really cool, wild, new thrashy metal. So yeah, it's very tight. The riff, it's a very complicated, fast riff as well, but it's played to perfection. So there you go. And over the years, according to Metal Blade, I mean, this has sold over 1 million copies worldwide, which is very cool. So it is a groundbreaking album. I mean, by this time you do have Anthrax. You've got 2 records by Metallica, and of course Slayer is going to put out their masterpiece that moves the needle even further forward with Rain and Blood the following year, 1986. But this is just a really cool, uncompromising. It probably is the heaviest of all the thrash albums at this point so far, and that's kind of a cool thing to for them to say. It's very, very uncompromising, very, very hellish and satanic in all the lyrics. Got a really good album cover as well, which has got a little bit of the hint of the hardcore in it, but it's still classy and cool in heavy metal, so that's cool. And the logo's used in a great way. But yeah, great epic song. 13 million plays on Spotify as I speak right here is pretty impressive as well. But yeah, definitely a good song that has this important historical piece as being the title track and being the first track on that album in terms of the story of heavy metal. So yeah, great choice, Brian. Slayer, Hell Awaits.
Thank you as always, Martin. Much appreciated. And there's always information in there that I don't even remember myself. So that's why I love having Martin to do this stuff. So thanks again.
I had that dream again. My small business needs to hire, but I don't use LinkedIn, and I hire an energy vampire. But also they're a literal vampire. And suddenly my team is spending all their time sharpening wooden stakes and buying bulk silver and rehearsing ancient chants, and then I wake up.
Don't let hiring nightmares ruin your dreams. LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant takes insights from over 1 billion professionals to create a short list of the best fits for you. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/quality. Start hiring today with LinkedIn.
And Martin, once again, we welcome in my friend, the legendary producer, engineer, mixer extraordinaire, Mr. Bill Metoyer. How are you, sir?
I am hanging in there. I'm doing pretty good. I'm alive.
There you go.
My feet hit the floor when I got out of bed, so
it's another day above ground, right?
Another day. Let's take it one at a time when you're old. So there you go.
Well, we're going to go back in time yet again. So we just did Black Magic by Slayer just a few episodes ago, actually. And I wasn't intending to get back to early Slayer again for a minute, but I asked my good friend, Mr. Blasko, if he wanted to come on and do a show. And he said, absolutely. But it has to be Slayer and the song has to be Hell Awaits. So I'm like, all right, well, then here you go. So that means you have to come on because you were in the room recording and engineering just like we all were. So you should hopefully have some good insight yet again.
I hope I can remember. Long time ago.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's kind of interesting because, like I said, we just talked about Show No Mercy and Black Magic just a few episodes ago. So here we are now. We fast forward about a year and a half later, I think, and we're in the studio recording Hell Awaits, my favorite Slayer album of all time, by the way, just get that out of the way.
Same here.
And they, the one thing that I remember was, we were both obviously pretty impressed by what they did on Show No Mercy. And we also did the EP Haunting the Chapel in between. So we could see the growth of these guys as players and songwriters. But really this record to me was, I was just in awe. I just literally just sitting in the studio, just in awe of what these guys were doing.
Yeah, that was definitely a WTF moment. It's like, even when you listen back, it's like, what the fuck did I just hear? And that song Hell Awaits, you had to play it again and again, and always wondering what that intro. I mean, to me, is there a better intro in thrash? I can't think of one.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a classic moment. And full disclosure, I've already recorded Blasko's part. And he was so excited about this song and talking about the song. And he mentioned how that intro was like the perfect intro and how amazing it was. And, the backwards masking thing that we did. And, of course, we did it because that was the whole big thing there is, oh, my gosh, let's actually do something and do it, which was difficult back in those days because we didn't have the technology that we had now, but it came out I mean, the whole thing just came out great. And one thing I mentioned to him, and we'll talk about it here too, about this song was that, well, first of all, you had the backward basking thing, join us. We had to do it backwards, which wasn't easy. But the other thing that I remember doing, and I don't want to take all the credit, but and I could be completely out of my mind, but I think that I might have been the one that suggested slowing down the Hello 8 so it sounded heavier. But the problem with that was you had to slow it down and they had to fit it in the song so it made sense. It went with the song. It wasn't too slow or too fast. I remember that was really difficult to get that part done right.
Yeah, that was hard back in the days when you're just working with tape. It'd be so easy with today's technology. It's ridiculous. But back then, doing that stuff, it was very difficult. Usually took a long time to do, actually.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we're talking about the days of 2-inch tape and no Pro Tools, no nothing, where, when you're mixing on the board, everybody has to get to their positions to move the faders up when a part happened. And usually there's a whole team of everybody in the band and stuff doing it. And I mean, I always thought that was fun. My favorite part of, I wasn't a real big fan of being in the studio, particularly because I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just there. There just to be there, I guess. But I loved mixing because I thought mixing was really fun and getting all the sounds together. And I love being on those faders and getting apart and putting it to the right level and stuff. That was a lot of fun for me. I know it was torture for a lot of other people, though.
Yeah, it was fun.
You didn't get it right.
Yeah, it depends on which fader you were using in control of, I think. But because if you screwed up, have to do it again. You couldn't just take that little part like today in a computer and fix it. You had to pretty much start over. So yeah, it was pretty difficult back in the day.
Yeah, and the same thing with the drums. I mean, you might be able to put a couple of drum things in there, but pretty much, Dave's got to play the whole thing, and it's pretty hard to do any sort of real changing of that, which was also a struggle. But the record just came out so good. It was interesting being in there. And the other interesting part, of course, about the production of this record is, I brought in Ron Fair, and Ron Fair was the guy who produced Christina Aguilera's first 3 albums, and he's got a whole legendary career in the music business. He ran Chrysalis and a bunch of other major labels. And I remember he told me that when he first met with Christina Aguilera to try to sign her and convince her to let him produce, he said, yeah, I worked on Slayer. And she's like, you worked on Slayer? Oh my, that's so over the top. So it helped him get that gig and sign her. So I'm happy that happened. But it was interesting having him in because he was, a guy who's made a lot of records and kind of felt it was interesting to have extra voice in there just to make sure it was all good. And I remember he was even kind of impressed by how well these guys were doing.
Mr. Ron Fair happened to have been my music teacher at the University of Sound Arts when I was 19. So
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how we know Ron. I mean, he was my favorite, the best music teacher. But the thing about him was he liked talking about the songs and recording and it was more than just a music class. I kept in touch with him, Mr. Tom Murphy, who was the owner of Track Record, where we did most of those early Metal Blade stuff. He was my electronics teacher at University of Sound Arts. So all those people you meet early on, becoming part of your career is pretty cool too.
Just shows you how even back then it's such a small world in the music business.
Exactly.
So this song in particular, obviously it had to be the opening, and they wanted it to be the opening of the album, obviously, the way they wrote it. And it's just the perfect intro, and there weren't really a lot of intros being done back then. So this was kind of maybe not even just for thrash metal, but really for metal in particular, like this big, long opening. That wasn't something that everybody was doing.
When you listen to that, it's so incredible. I mean, first of all, the guitar noise at the beginning, and then the backwards voices. And then when the drums hit, it goes into a nice, slow groove, which is incredible. And then the next part is a little faster. And then all of a sudden, wham, the speed hits you in the face, man. I mean, that song, back then, again, that was just way, way fast for a band to be playing. Props to Mr. Lombardo, that's for sure.
guy's a legend and amazing. But yeah, they wanted. I mean, that was the whole thing back then, especially Metallica and Slayer. I remember there was a big competition between those two, and I would always get asked questions from either side because they didn't really talk to each other that much. And by this point, Metallica was in San Francisco anyway, and kind of on there. But like, how fast is the new Slayer stuff? And then Slayer, how fast is the new Metallica stuff? And there was always a war there. So I felt this song in particular was, let's see how fast we can play something. But it works perfect because you've got that intro. And this is what I love about like so many different bands who are heavy, where to make it real heavy, you almost have to slow it down for a second and just have to take like a little break and then come back in and hit hard. And that's what this intro does. It's a nice little mellow, really cool intro leading up to something. And then, yeah, you get hit in the face with a sledgehammer.
The thing that's always amazed me about that song is how the hell did Tom say those vocals so fast? I mean, I still listen. I go, man, how the hell did that guy do that?
I remember we were in the studio doing that, and we're all kind of like, is he going to be able to do this way? And as I remember, he did a really good job. I don't think we did more than a couple of takes.
No, we never did more than a couple of takes, but you didn't have to with that guy. I mean, he was incredible.
Not only just to fit all those words and lines in, but to do it in a way that it's like melodic and has like a melody to it that goes with the music. It just goes to show you the brilliance of, everybody in that band. I'm obviously Kerry and Jeff writing these amazing songs and two phenomenal guitar players. And I mean, what can you say about Dave Lombardo? He's my favorite drummer of all time, metal wise. So, and then, and Tom had the classic voice.
I don't even think he gets the props as a singer as much as he should, to be honest with you. To be able to pull off something like that, it was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the magic of the part. I agree. I don't know that he gets nearly as much props for that. One thing, too, about Tom, we know when he had the neck surgery and he couldn't headbang on stage anymore, but he sounded perfect. Like, really the whole time through Slayer, and his vocals aren't easy, and I'm sure not easy on the voice either. But up until I didn't see them on this last couple of dates they did, but I saw some video and it sounded fine. But even up until those last shows of the Forum, I mean, he sounded great.
Yes, he did. I mean, to be able to maintain that. I mean, basically, he's yelling a lot. I mean, how could he do all those shows right in a row and still have a voice? That was amazing to me also.
Yeah, and I love the fact too that they continued to play this song in the set really pretty much through their entire career. I mean you kind of have to, because it's a legendary song. And towards the end, when they were able to get a lot of the production, the fire that they had in the song was just, if you've never seen Slayer do Hell Awaits, like towards the last couple of tours, you've got to go look it up on YouTube. The fire is just insane. At one point I kept thinking like, it's like somebody's going to ignite on fire, like Gary Holt or Gary King's going to just explode at some point.
The other thing about Hell Awaits, I mean, they got pretty big once Rain and Blood came out. And then people started wanting to hear some of the earlier material, and I think this was the album that people really caught on with. Said, wow, I didn't know this was around. And everything about that song is incredible. I do have a story about the intro that a lot of people probably don't know, because obviously the way it was done back then is you had to play the tape backwards. We just had a mic set up and a bunch of people standing around the mic. I mean, whenever Slayer was in the studio, it wasn't just the band. They had a bunch of friends always. I remember the mic was set up. All these guys were around it. Just when I pushed record, everybody was just talking and screaming and, just making a lot of noise. And then all of a sudden, I hear somebody say, "Join us, join us." And then you hear another person join us. By the end of that, everybody was saying, "Join us, join us." And then, of course, you flip the tape over and you play it, and It almost sounds like they're going Slayer, Slayer, but they were saying join us, join us. And the thing about it is like I said, at first everybody was just making noise, but by the end of it, everyone was saying join us. But the interesting fact about that is Slayer always had this little kid. I think every time we did a Slayer record, he was in the studio with us. And he just happened to be one of the people standing around the mic. When we first did it, it didn't dawn on me who started saying join us. But the first person that I recognized, first voice that I recognized was Jeff Hanneman's voice. I think he was standing next to this little kid. And this little kid, this little snot-nosed kid was the one that first started saying, join us. And then Jeff joined in, and then everybody joined in. And the thing about that little kid, he grew up to be an incredible drummer. And he was in bands like Dark Angel, and it was Mr. Gene Hoglan was the one that pretty much started that join us. And that's something a lot of people don't really know.
Yeah, well, I think I talk about it in one of my books about the fact that when we did Show No Mercy, there weren't a whole lot of people in the studio, but there was one guy who was in the studio every single day, and I had no idea who he was. He was just hanging around, and I finally asked Carrie or Jeff or somebody, like, who is this kid that's just hanging around? I was like, oh, this guy's Gene, and he's helping us out. I'm like, oh, okay. And of course, yeah, it ended up being the legendary Gene Hoglan. Another interesting thing about this song too, and you mentioned the join us and the whole, how it kind of starts and becomes like a big thing. Carrie is and was a huge fan of Queen. So we kind of did a little Bohemian Rhapsody, version on that to build it up and then have as many people say join us as possible. Kind of a little tiny ode to Queen in there. We were always stealing stuff from production stuff from bands and, like Priest and everybody else. But yeah, Carrie's a huge Queen fan.
A lot of metal guys love, at least back in the early days, loved Queen. I mean, especially the production on those records were incredible.
Yeah, they're an incredible band, and I got to see them with Freddie a few times, and what a great front man. So it's super fun. All right, man. Well, this is always fun. Thanks again. We're gonna have you back on whether you like it or not. So thanks again, my friend.
Yeah, damn it. I hate doing these things, but I got to do them for you.
Well, I appreciate that, and you're great, so it's all good.
Yeah, I'm a co-producer of a podcast myself. It's called the Candle Power Hour. You can just type it into your browser, and it'll come up. Trust me. What we do is we have people from the entertainment industry, whether it be music, actors, producers, lighting men. So we try to find people with interesting stories and ask about their experiences more than just talking about the bands that they're in. So, yeah, look it up. It's the Candle Power Hour. Any place that you get your podcast, so you can find it.
Oh, well, you guys know what to do. As soon as you're finished with this episode, immediately go to your browser, put that in, and check it out. Because if it's Bill Metoyer, it's going to.
This episode is brought to you by Credit Karma. When it comes to your money, Credit Karma keeps you ahead of the game. You can count on Credit Karma to keep up with your financial needs as they evolve, helping you monitor your progress and giving you personalized recommendations so you can make strides towards your goals. Make sure you're on the right track, no matter where you are on your financial journey. Intuit Credit Karma. Karma you can count on. Download today.
To be good. And now we welcome in the man who has played bass with Ozzy Osbourne, currently playing bass with Rob Zombie, has played in Zach Sabbath, and actually started his musical career on Metal Blade and Cryptic Slaugher, legendary punk band. He also manages a million huge bands and A Man About Town, Liquid Death Ambassador. I could go on and on. Mr. Blasko, how are you, sir?
Good. What's happening, man? Thank you for having me. And yes, every time I see you, I have to be overly appreciative because I honestly believe you signing my first band whenever I was a teenager in high school. I got signed to Metal Blade Records in 1985, and by the time I had graduated high school, I had already put out 3 records and been on tour. People like don't believe that that could even be a true statement. But case in point, it is true. But that definitely planted the seed in my brain of like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Like, I want to be in a heavy metal band. And that maybe would not have materialized if it wasn't for you signing our silly little band in 1985. So I have to always be very appreciative and honor you and say that, you know, I think my career in heavy metal had a lot to do with you. So I appreciate it.
Well, thanks. Any little thing I can do. And I remember that because we had to get your parents to sign off on it. I think that was the first time we had to do that because you can't have underage kids sign a contract and have it be legal.
No, we were all, except for Les, like we were all in high school.
Yeah. And the band's great. I mean, check them out. I mean, they've become a legend in the underground punk rock circles. You're in all sorts of crazy, like top 100 albums of all time things. So it's pretty insane.
The most wild thing that we are in is The Decline of the Western Civilization Part 2.
Oh, that's right.
Which is predominantly like a hair metal documentary from like the Sunset Strip, really, right? I remember distinctly, like Les and I went to Westwood to watch that movie, not knowing that there was a mention of us in the movie. We had no idea because, you know, this was pre-social media, right? Like this is pre like anything of that nature. I remember distinctly, we were at the theater watching the movie, and there's this weird part where Penelope is like interviewing people and she's like, what's your favorite band? And it's just like, whatever, Iron Maiden, like Wet Cherry, like whatever it was. And then all of a sudden this like guy with glasses and a mohawk goes, Cryptic Slaughter. It's such an outlier in that movie because we have zero to do with that scene and with those people and with just that group of musicians at all. And it was just so random. But that's just the lore of that band is just like, people just like that name. I think even you said you're like, oh, I just really like the name.
Yeah. Well, that was the first thing. I'm like, yeah, the name's pretty good. Hopefully they're halfway decent because that's a great name.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny. Well, I'm happy it all worked out for you.
Yeah, man.
When I asked you to do the podcast, you were adamant that you had to do the song Hello Ace by Slayer. So why is that?
Well, because you said the songs have to be pivotal in some way because there's only 100. So these have to be like markers in time that mark a specific time in metal to where after that moment things change.
Yeah, I mean, it's the 100 songs that define heavy metal. So absolutely, that's a big parameter for sure.
Like, I think my brain goes to like obvious places, right? Like rock and roll all night and party every day. Like that's the gateway drug into heavy metal for me. Like in 1977, like I made my mom go buy me a Kiss record, and she did. For me, that's the moment, right? That's the gateway drug. And I'm sure everyone else has their gateway drug story. But then like I think of other things like AC/DC Back in Black, like the whole record, right? But like Hell's Bells, like if you're thinking of like some like moment of like the 100 perfect songs that define heavy metal, like Hell's Bells, like just the Black record. It was very mysterious at the time. Like you kind of didn't understand the premise, right? Especially if you heard Hell's Bells, like it's such a dark song, like moments like that. And then you get into like obviously like Metallica and stuff, and then Pantera, right? But I was just like, for me, as an LA based guy, as a guy whose career spawned from Metal Blade, Slayer was a local band for us. I've seen Slayer on every single record, including Show No Mercy. And the first time I saw them play was at the Roxy. It was like a Metal Blade Records showcase. I don't even know if Show No Mercy was out yet. It probably was. And it was Slayer was first of four, and the bill was Slayer, Savage Grace, Bitch, and Pandemonium. That was the lineup.
With Pandemonium headlining, by the way.
Pandemonium headlining. Now I don't, because if it was a showcase, like I don't know if it was just they just played last or if they were headlining. Like you would know more than I would if there was a moment in time when they were like a hot shit band on the scene.
They were really good at promoting themselves, and you know they'd come down from Alaska, and they would just be out all over the place promoting themselves, and they got a bit of an audience. And you know they were kind of good looking guys, so there was definitely more girls there for that. But they at that point they outdrew all those other bands, and Slayer was just starting out. It might have been their second show in LA, maybe. I don't think it was the first, maybe the second or third, something like that. So as early on, but yeah, it's Crazy Bill. I remember that show.
Yeah, I distinctly remember, like I said, I was going to spend the night at my buddy Roy's house, and his parents were very like loosey-goosey. And So we snuck out of the house and took the bus to the Roxy to see that show. And our parents didn't know. It was pretty awesome. Anyway, case in point though is that Slayer was a local band for us. So they would play locally a lot because it was their backyard. So it was like country club and, kind of wherever else. But I remember the country club the most because that felt like the place that we would go to the most. So because of that, we saw the incremental trajectory. Like every show got a little bit bigger, right? They just added a little bit more production, and we were tape trading like live tapes, of theirs, and we got to hear things like Necrophobic before it came out, and on the live tapes. But case in point, this was one of those songs that I saw live before I ever heard it on an album, because they would just do that, like play a new song, or play new songs or whatever before the album was out. In terms of defining heavy metal, there's so much about this song that defines heavy metal to me and was so pivotal in it. I also think too that this song has never been beaten. I don't think any heavy metal band has beat this song for what it is in terms of a heavy metal song. Number one, it starts off with the backwards recorded stuff, which was such a thing. Like there was such a thing of like, if you play this record backwards, it says kill yourself. And like, didn't like Judas Priest get like sued because some guys played the records backwards and it said kill yourself, and the guys tried to kill themselves?
Yeah, in fact, to interject a little promotion here, this TV show I'm involved with called Into the Void, which is going to be on Vice and Hulu and all that stuff. They're doing a whole episode on that whole thing where Judas Priest got sued. They all had to go to court over it, and like nobody knew what was going to happen, and they had to go live in wherever, like Oregon or wherever it was, for like a month. It's pretty scary at the time. So yeah.
So you and I lived through it, but for the listeners that didn't know, you have to understand that it was a real satanic panic going on in the United States, that
Oh yeah.
heavy metal bands were putting mysterious messages in their albums so that whenever you listen to them backwards, like why would you listen to the record backwards? But if you did, there would be hidden messages to tell you to do crazy shit like kill yourself or kill your family or whatever. It was a real thing going on, like all heavy metal bands. Anyway, I loved the idea that they started the album off with something that was purposely printed backwards. So me and my friends, of course, listened to, because there was only vinyl then whenever that came out, right? There wasn't even CDs yet, right? It was just cassettes.
Nope, only vinyl.
Yeah, just cassettes and vinyl. And so whenever you use your finger to turn that vinyl backwards on the needle, which your needle is super not happy about, that you're doing that. When you do that, the backwards message in that says join us, right? And I was like, that is awesome. They just like middle finger at America, like the satanic panic they were just doubling down on.
Yeah, and that's why we did it. We did it because, there's all this talk about this backward masking, all this bullshit. We're like, hey, look, let's just be upfront about it. Let's open the record with that. And, we kind of all came up with the idea, is obviously their idea. But, I thought when they mentioned that, I was like, oh, we have to do that. Like, we have to do that, do it backwards and have it be, noticeable. So it's, I don't want it to be unnoticeable. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun, but we did it to piss people off 100%. And
it was such the move, right? I just love it.
And my voice is in there too, so I'm happy about that.
Oh, that's awesome. Then it goes into this epic intro from a music standpoint of where they came from Show No Mercy, and then just only a year or two later to go to this. Just their musicianship had catapulted light years. And then in terms of defining heavy metal, because they, on side 2 of Show No Mercy, they were kind of flirting with like intros and stuff a little bit, like Black Magic kind of flirts with it a little bit. But for the most part, like Show No Mercy is kind of pretty punk rock, like in it. It's like, there's like cool riffs, but vocals come in pretty much right away. We're playing as fast as we can. Like, it's pretty just like pedal to the metal, and it's just like guns a-blazing. Whereas this, there's like a lot of restraint in the orchestration of how the riffs go together. And just the whole intro is just so like magical to me. Like, and then how it seamlessly then goes into the song. And then when it kicks in, it's just like Lombardo just has to keep up that pace for like 4 minutes straight. Like there's no breaks at all. It just rips your face off.
Now I have you deep inside my everlasting grasp. The steps to the gates of hell, that's why you can live that. Warriors from hell's way will bring you to your death. The flames of hate burn strong, the souls to never rest. The gates of hell I will never see. There's no part of me, just follow me. I can take a lost soul from the grave. Jesus on his soul cannot be saved. Sacrifice the lives of all I know this is lie. This will never rot in hell, dignified, no demons die.
Then I gotta say the thing that also too that was so out of the ordinary for heavy metal was just the cadence of the melody in the verse. Like it's so punk rock. Like you can't like it's like the first time that you really couldn't understand the lyrics. Like you really had to kind of break out the lyric sheet and like look at, and because he's jamming the words in so fast and he fits them all in, but it was a very punk rock delivery, which was like way out of the box. You know, it was way out of the comfort zone of heavy metal that before it, like in terms of like say classic, right? Like Sabbath, you know, Priest, Maiden, right? Like this was going somewhere else. Like we're taking metal into a completely different direction. And then the chorus, man, the chorus, how it stops and he just pounds out those 3 lines real quick and then it kicks back in to the riff. It was like you never heard anything like that before. You're like, oh wait, that can be a chorus? It doesn't even compute yet. And then Hell Awaits, when he says it and it's got the vocal effect on it to where it sounds very demonic and shit. Right there, you're like, I might as well not even bother trying to be in a band because I'm never going to write a song better than this ever in my life. To be a fly on the wall in their rehearsal space as they piece that thing together from kind of start to finish, like I'm just so, I mean, you might even know, right? But like that song and just up until he says Hell Awaits for the first time, right there, that was like a defining moment in heavy metal that people tried to replicate on some level with just the orchestration and the musicianship and everything. But man, never did anyone come close, in my opinion.
It was a really interesting song. And they did some of that stuff in the studio, actually. Really wrote some of that stuff on the album and the song Hell Awaits a little bit in the studio because they'd kind of come back around pretty quickly to make a record after that. And it's interesting because there was so many different parts to that song. We're in the studio recording it that were interesting because obviously they didn't use a click, which then there's a lot of stuff going on in that song and it gets really fast, which is crazy. And it really, it showcases the brilliance, in my opinion, of Slayer, of the Jeff Hanneman punk rock stuff and the Kerry King European metal. And those two things coming together just kind of perfectly where it's all there. One thing I do remember that was really, I mean, Tom did a really great job, like you said, jamming all those lyrics in. It wasn't easy. But it works. But the hardest part, though, was the Hell Awaits because we slowed that down. So we had him record it, then we slowed it down. But then he had to do it in a way that when we slowed it down, it would fit in the song. So that wasn't, this is way before Pro Tools or anything. So that was kind of hard to do. But we ended up getting it done. But yeah, it's. I mean, I love that song. I love the fact that obviously they still play today. Kerry still plays it in his solo project, which is amazing. And seeing these kids, who are young, just completely flip out when if the first chord hits, everybody knows what it is, and they just start freaking out. All these years later is, pretty amazing how it's stood the test of time.
Yeah, the lyrics are amazing in it as well. It's like Venom times 20. Everything about that song was just so elevated for heavy metal. That's why, to me, I was like, yeah, you could go Angel of Death, and you go like, Rain and Blood, or like there's so many obvious choices. But in terms of, for me, what changed the general dynamic and trajectory of how heavy metal bands wrote songs and thought about the orchestration of it, that to me sort of really kind of broke the mold and said, there are no rules here. You can play as fast as you want. A chorus doesn't have to be what you think it is. You don't have to have a short intro and go right into the vocal, right? Like there's all these elements in that song that just redefine the landscape of heavy metal, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. In fact, Hell Awaits, the album and the song, that's my favorite Slayer album of all of them because it's so diverse. Like, I mean, look, Rain and Blood is unbelievable and that, the best thrash speed metal album of all time for sure. But Hell Awaits had all these different elements. You had the slower parts, you had the faster parts, you had Crypts of Eternity. You had 2 songs that were over 6 minutes. They've never written a song that long ever since. And Kerry's like, I'm never going to write a long song. He hates Iron Maiden now because they write long songs, and there's 2. I mean, Hell Awaits is a pretty long song for them, as was At Dawn They Sleep.
Yeah, that's Matt Dawn They Sleep is a masterpiece as well.
Yeah, so much great stuff on there. There's so much diversity, and that's why I think that to me is the defining Slayer album because you get all the great bits of Slayer all in one record that they kind of have done over the course of their career. And yeah, it's really weird. I mean, you've made records before, but as a I was the quote unquote producer. Not that I really knew what I was doing, other than being there to try to help at way I could. But a lot of times you're in the studio, and we weren't in there for long, but we were probably in there for a couple of weeks, and you got to mix it and the whole thing. Usually, by the time you're done, because you're hearing these songs over and over and over and over and over again. By the time you're done with the record, like, I don't want to hear this record ever again. But when we were done with this, I couldn't stop listening to it even after we had finished it. I was just so blown away by what these kids had. I mean, they were just kids, like, 18, 19 years old. I was like 21 or 22 or whatever it was. We're all just young kids. And being in the studio while they're making this record was just, I mean, really mind blowing. They're so brilliant. And the musicianship was so high end, and what they were doing was so easy. Like, it wasn't a hard session. Like, they knew what they wanted, they knew how to do it, and they all, obviously Jeff, Kerry, and Dave were just unbelievable players. And you make a really good point about them in the year and a half, 2 years since Show No Mercy, really got much better musically as musicians than they were before. And that was kind of, seeing a band that young get that much better that quickly was pretty intense.
Absolutely. I don't know that it's ever been a thing. I mean, because we were talking about this Born Again record before we clicked record, but like, I never had an issue with the production, and I don't know that anyone else ever has either. I don't know that I've ever heard it mentioned, but I was listening to the Armored Saint podcast that you guys did, the March of the Saint, and you pointed out something to where at that time, I don't know what the word is, but it was so exciting or so refreshing because everybody sounded different. All the albums sounded different, right? It was different studios, different budgets, different musicians, right? Like, and comparatively, I think it was Jay that was saying, like, now just kind of everything kind of sounds the same. There's not a whole lot of innovation or anything really kind of anymore when it comes to it. But like, this was something that really, like, if it was polished, it quite possibly just wouldn't have had the same impact, right? Because it was so raw and so real, no click track. These are real dudes. They're young guys. They're just going for it, right? There's at that time, what was that, like 85, 84, 85 that they
I think we recorded in 84, came out in 85.
Right, 84. These guys weren't like, oh, this is our career choice. Like, oh, this is what's going to define us as human beings 20 years from now. That wasn't what was going on. They were like, let's just be the most badass dudes we could possibly be, with no real aspirations of becoming like famous, right? It was just like
100%. And I mean, I'm fairly happy with the production on it. I think it could have been better, but look, we didn't have much of a budget at all, so we're only in there for a limited amount of time. It's still one of those records that I listened to it a couple months ago. I hadn't heard it for a while in my favorite Motorhead headphones, and it sounds good. Like I was like, it sounds pretty good actually for what it is.
Yeah, I listened to it just previous to jumping on here just to get a refresher, and I was like, this totally still stands up. Like it's awesome.
And the songs do too. I always like the fact when you go back and listen to stuff like that it still sounds kind of fresh and new. And a song like that, and you talk about it perfectly. It definitely is one of the 100 songs that define heavy metal for sure.
For sure, man.
Well, dude, thank you so much for this, man. I love your passion for the song, and I think you really eloquently made a great statement as to why this song should be included in here. And much appreciated, man. Always appreciate seeing you. And thanks again, man. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It was great.
And that'll do it. Big thanks to Mr. Blasko for doing this. Really great. And he's so passionate about this song. It was a lot of fun talking to him. As always, good to see my friend Bill Metoyer. And of course, Mr. Martin Popoff. Lizzie Borden for our great intro music. And as always, the man who puts it all together, producer Mr. Christian Blatt. See you guys next episode.